It's also for children going to school, it's just a whole new world, isn't it? Just having to be tested. It's not frightening in that sense, but I mean, what do you think, Mike? It's just, can you imagine going to school?
My children and my stepson that it actually is a lot easier than you think. OK, it does tickle a little bit when it goes up the nose, you sort of do a funny face, but actually the science behind it is quite simple. It doesn't really hurt, and I'm renowned for being clumsy.
Now, many parents have been counting down the final days of homeschooling and the long-awaited return to the classroom for pupils in England. It begins on Monday. Of course, Scotland and Wales, different attendance.
Yeah, students and everyone in the household will be offered regular lateral flow testing kits to make the return to face-to-face teaching as COVID-safe as it possibly can be.
Now, John Maguire has been talking to families who I imagine some are quite excited about the return to school life.
It's back to school again, till summer. John Maguire, BBC News.
Of course, one of the things that will happen at school that's very different now are these lateral flow tests. So we asked our GP doctor, Nigat Arif, one of our regular doctors, to explain how to properly use one.
Hello, I'm Dr. Nigat Arif. I have got my at-home COVID-19 rapid flow test, and I'm going to demonstrate to you how to use this. So you open your cassette, you take this out, and you're given something like this. You also get this as well, and in that goes your solution, and you squeeze all that in there. Okay, you take a swab, take the bottom bit out of your swab, okay, you go right down into your mouth, and then these go up your nose as well. Then dab it into the solution, pop this onto the top. Now you got a little squeezy bottle. This then will go on this. If you see two lines, one next to C and one next to T, even faint lines, this shows the test is positive. You must report this to the NHS.
Now, a lot of people will have done those tests already. Some people won't, including some school children. Let's talk to Lucy Hubber now, who's Director of Public Health from Luton Borough Council. Lucy, very good morning to you. What have you, I'm not quite sure where you are in the process in Luton in terms of the schools that have been doing this already. What have you learnt so far about how this works in practice?
In Luton, we've been running lateral flow test centres since the beginning of December, open access to our population. And before the schools went back in January, we had large numbers of school children and their families coming in and being tested, particularly the bit when you are squidging the swab within the squeezy tube and counting to 10. That's really important to get that bit right. So what we're suggesting in Luton is, because we've got these rapid test centres that are open to the population, come and have a test with us. We will help parents or people in childcare bubbles learn how they can do their own tests, just like the children are being taught in school, so that when they take their test kits home, they can be really confident in knowing how to do it properly.
Are you able in any way, Lucy, to check to make sure that the youngsters, what we're talking about now, they are actually doing the test properly, both at school and at home?
I think what's really important is these home tests need to be checked by one of the usual PCR, the standard tests, so that those positive results are confirmed. That's really important because we're asking people to then stay at home for 10 days. So that result really matters. I think if we see large outbreaks in numbers in schools, then we will start to go in and do some work to make sure that those rapid tests are being taken properly at home. So
they take a lateral flow test and they're part of a bubble. These bubbles that we've created, so it's a limited number. So if you do get a positive at that point, who has to leave the premises? What happens next?
So as you heard on your clip, if you test positive on a lateral flow test, a rapid test, in school, you will immediately be asked to go home and for your household to isolate. If you have that rapid test at home, you'll then be asked to go and have an extra test, a PCR test, to check that it's right. The school will identify close contacts, so they'll look at the people who have been within 2 meters of you or very close to you during your school day for the 2 days before your positive test. And those people will be asked to isolate at home. And that's exactly what we were doing before Christmas. So that hasn't changed. That remains the same. And schools are very used now to either identifying tight bubbles or being able to spot close contacts, so that we can try and only send home those children that absolutely need to go home and isolate.
And Lucy, as you look ahead to next week, how many schools are open in their entirety? Because we understand that quite a lot of schools, they have a freedom, don't they, within the guidelines to open over a period of time. So how many of your schools are actually open to all students?
They will all be opening next week to all students. They will be taking the opportunity of phasing the first day to allow students to come in and be tested in a safe way. So that we can get those first tests done. But actually, all of our schools will be open and all of our students will be able to come back to school next week.
Good luck next week. It's an important week, isn't it? So I hope it all goes well for you, and we'll find out how it works out. That's Lucy Hubber, who's Luton's Director of Public Health. Of course, they're everywhere in England next week, different across different parts of the UK. It's happening everywhere. So, it's be interesting to see how it works out.
I just think it's also for children going to school, it's just a whole new world, isn't it? Just having to be tested. It's not frightening in that sense, but I mean, what do you think, Mike? It's just, can you imagine going to school?
My children and my stepson that it actually is a lot easier than you think. OK, it does tickle a little bit when it goes up the nose, you sort of do a funny face. But actually, the science behind it is quite simple. It doesn't really hurt. And I'm renowned for being clumsy. And if I can do it,
I must say, you would not be the person I'd want to be swabbing my nose.
Well, I was rubbish at chemistry at school, but at the end of this, you feel really proud you've done a scientific experiment. There we are.
Yeah, A&E do not need someone appearing with a swab right up the nose.
Alan Mike.
No.
I'll tell you what. Rescue jobs.
Oh, I tell you.
Cricket.
Yeah. They're about to go for tea. Those teacups are going to be rattling, jangling over tea because the excitement is building.
It's also for children going to school. It's just a whole new world, isn't it? Just having to be tested. It's not frightening in that sense, but I mean, what do you think, Mike? It's just, can you imagine going to school?
My children and my stepson that it actually is a lot easier than you think. OK, it does tickle a little bit when it goes up the nose, you sort of do a funny face. But actually, the science behind it is quite simple. OK, it does tickle a little bit when it goes up the nose, you sort of do a funny face. But actually, the science behind it is quite simple. It doesn't really hurt. And I'm renowned for being clumsy. And if I can do it,
I must say, you would not be the person I'd want to be swabbing my nose.
OK, it does tickle a little bit when it goes up the nose, you sort of do a funny face. But actually, the science behind it is quite simple. It doesn't really hurt. And I'm renowned for being clumsy.
We'll see you in a few minutes.